like to welcome you to the Baseline to Baseline podcast/show.
It's steps to success rather than failures.
But it seems like right now it's just not working.
You've never seen a center like him who could do the amount of things that he can.
So I think the Celtics probably are the ones to beat if they all stay healthy. Hello everyone, good day. My name is Alister Albert, bringing you another episode of Baseline to Baseline with Alister Albert. Of course, we like to say we like bringing the Caribbean to the world via the NBA. It's the slogan for this page. Always repeat it anytime I come on. And today I want to say that I'm going to have a really great episode today. I would like to say, this is one of the first interview guests that I'm bringing on to the podcast. There are many more to come. A lot of people in mind that I would like to have up. Speaking about basketball and just everything sports related, but basketball specifically, of course. And his name is Ed Odeven. He is author of the book Going 15 Rounds with Jerry Izenberg. We'll get more into that when we speak with him. And also he's a sports editor at Japan Forward. So he's based in Japan. He's one of the lead sports editors for the Japan Forward and also Sports Look Japan or Sports Looks JP. He also has a column called Odds and Evens, very clever use of his name there, Odeven. A column that he writes very, very frequently, talking about the world of sports and quite a lot of different headlines that come up throughout the sporting calendar. Ed is someone that I've been really looking forward to speak to for quite some time. We share a common acquaintance in Peter Vesey, one of the famed NBA analysts and sports writers of old, but still very active and still very knowledgeable about the NBA and how things happen in the background, and just his knowledge is excellent. So Peter Vesey, shout out to him. But Ed, I wanted to interview him a few years ago. It was actually during 2020, during the COVID pandemic time, but things ended up getting a little, busy and messed up. So I have Ed on here now today, and I really look forward to speaking to him. So there are no dedicated topics specifically for today. We're going to jump straight into the interview with Ed, but we're definitely going to have our Bétiz of the week. Like I always say, Bétiz equals or is a St. Lucian Creole patois word meaning nonsense or foolishness. So Bétiz of the week, we're going to call out what we thought was nonsense in the NBA this week. And also, of course, our footnote section where I highlight a shoe of note for the coming all-star game, I would say, because there's a person who's going to be in an event, and I think it would be great to kind of highlight a shoe that this person is wearing. So Ed, I'd like to welcome you to this interview. I'm really happy that you're able to join us here today, joining us all the way from Japan, which is really cool. It's really late over by your side. It's like what, 12 o'clock right now, after 12 a.m.
Yeah, you'll notice I'm drinking coffee here, so I thought it might help me be a little more energetic, but I'm actually kind of a night owl to begin with, but I don't want to fall asleep on you during the interview.
I suppose as a sports writer, it is a night owl business because you had to cover sports and try to put things out really quickly. So I totally understand you'll be up all through the night, really trying to cover as much, and especially with the time difference, from the US, and you cover a lot of the Japanese guys in the US. So that makes total sense. But yeah, definitely. Thank you for coming on. I really appreciate that. Like I said, this is Ed Odeven, who is the author of Going 15 Rounds with Jerry Izenberg. And you could show the book, Ed. You could just show your copy. This is a really lovely book which covers and chronicles quite a lot of the career, the sports writing career of Jerry Izenberg. This is a famed sports writer who covered at least 24 Muhammad Ali fights, the first 53 Super Bowls, 55 consecutive Kentucky Derbies, and at least or around 40 World Series. This is a guy who's been around the block and covered quite a lot of sports. So, much respect to someone like that. That's someone to look up to. Was he like a mentor of yours or something? Did you know him personally?
Well, I was born in New York City, and Jerry is from Newark, New Jersey, which is the state next to New York.
Yes.
And I grew up in New Jersey, but I've never met Jerry in person. But actually, I've read him my whole life, pretty much. Mm-hmm. And I sort of established a very friendly just occasionally email him about a story or ask him some questions for historical perspective. And I really enjoyed reading him for years in my high school years, college years,
Right, right.
becoming a professional and trying to look up to the better writers and columnists in the business. Who are the best of the best?
Yep.
And it kind of progressed to the point where I was interested in doing a long series interview with him for my own website, or possibly try to shop it as a freelance, magazine piece or a website. I didn't get a lot of affirmative replies to like, please, are you interested in a story about Jerry Izenberg? People are sort of like, oh, we've done stories, or it's not really our market, or we're looking for something else to write about. But back in 2014, I guess 10 years ago now, I asked him if I could do a phone interview with him for this like a running series that I do, a Q&A with different people in sports or media, sometimes artists, comedians, different people in different aspects of their careers.
Right, okay.
And I said I'd be interested in sort of like hearing about your background a bit, and do you think we could maybe chat a bit? And I guess we were both pretty busy with various projects, and next thing I knew, 2014 morphed into 2015. So at some point I emailed him back, and Jerry, I'd still be interested in interviewing you.
Yeah.
I emailed him one day, and he said, I haven't forgotten either. Thank you for your patience. I'll tell you what, when I get back from vacation in Hawaii, let's set something up.
Right. Cool.
So what we did was, it was around this time of night, I think, actually, like midnight, 1 a.m, Japan time.
Right.
And he's semi-retired, living in Henderson, Nevada, on the outskirts of Las Vegas.
Okay.
And we spoke for the first time, roughly 3 hours. We did a 3-hour interview.
Right.
And we bounced around from his childhood to his mentors, to his father, to his recollections of taking the train and covering baseball back in the 1950s, when Major League Baseball was still basically, the teams would travel by train and sometimes bus, but this was before really the jet cross country travel. And he talked about how like the players got close to the press, and they would eat meals and play cards like in the dining cars and the trains.
Right. Wow.
We spoke about civil rights and the opportunities that blacks were given eventually after racism really was ugly at the foundation levels of sports in America.
Right.
We talked about Muhammad Ali. We talked about some of the real mentors that he had, like Red Smith, great North American columnists. College football, horse racing. We talked about Cuba a little bit, boxing in Cuba.
Okay, right.
And baseball in Cuba.
Yep.
And how the impact of communism, how it impacted the pipeline of players, and also there was really talk back in the day that Havana would get a Major League Baseball team.
Okay, right.
And with the way the country changed, capitalism was sort of outlawed essentially, other than on the black market, controlled by the Castro government. That dream really died, and Miami eventually got a team.
Yes.
But yeah, that first interview with Jerry really formed the foundation of what eventually became a book.
Right. Okay.
I guess I started out first making blog entries, and I had 15 separate articles, and then the kind of the idea was, Jerry's known for boxing. Used to be 15 rounds, the big fights, right? So that's how it became, going 15 rounds with Jerry Izenberg.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Yep. Yeah, that's really cool. And yeah, it's a wide-ranging career, like you say, spanning quite a few decades, and also covering loads of different sports and the geopolitical stuff happening at that time, the social rights stuff and everything that you mentioned, which would have been a really interesting time to have been a sports writer, to see what's going on in that time. So that's really, really interesting. What I want to do now is we'll pivot from going 15 rounds with Jerry for now, but that's really good. So we're going to promote this a little bit as the show goes on. But
Can I make one quick comment?
Go ahead. Yep.
Okay. just as life progressed and as work was busy with newspaper work and other projects,
Hmm.
really the catalyst to finish the book in my mind was actually the pandemic. And
Right. Okay.
Jerry Jerry turned 90 years old in September of 2020.
Right. Okay.
And as I told myself, thinking in my mind, what I keep procrastinating. I make a little progress, then I sort of like
Mm,
2 months, I get nothing done. I'm rewriting this chapter or I'm updating this portion.
I know what you
But
mean.
2019 turned it into 2020, and I said, I really need to get this project done if I'm ever going to get it done.
Yeah.
And being remotely, being at home a lot, it sort of helped me actually focus and get it accomplished.
Yeah, and this is actually something which was I actually had a conversation with Peter Vesey about this because I interviewed him in 2020 as well for my other website, The Actors Post, where I kind of talk to people within the entertainment industry. And considering he was one of the biggest faces in NBA broadcasting and analysis, TV studio analysis, sideline reporting,
Mhm.
etc. We spoke, and he I think he's been saying he wants to write a book as well, but he's kind of going through a little bit of the procrastination as well, and he wants to try
Yeah.
to get it done. And I've told him I'm waiting for that copy. I want my signed copy. He actually has lineage, and some of his history comes
Yeah.
to Liverpool in the UK. So he's been saying he wanted to come over and visit, the family, ancestral home,
Mhm.
and I've been waiting to see if he does that as well. But this I understand what it is in terms of procrastinating, and sometimes that happens. But what I always say is sometimes you just have to let the inspiration take you when it does, because
Yes.
what ends up happening a lot of the time, if you try to force the writing, you're probably just not going to be doing your best thing. And of course, you don't want to procrastinate and kind of waste too much time. You have to have that motivation
Mm.
to do it, but
Right.
sometimes you have to kind of just let it organically come to you, because that's when it becomes probably your better work. So I totally understand, but you got it done. 2020 it was published.
Jerry is 93 years old,
93.
and
Okay, cool, very good. Okay.
he you mentioned about the 53 Super Bowls he covered those at the stadium, but
All right.
since the 54th Super Bowl, he's been writing from home or from like,
Still
going
doing
to a
it.
sports book and watching it like a, with all the gambling going on
Yeah,
and
yeah,
whatnot.
yeah.
It's just the crowd, all the big crowds that like the getting from the media bus, getting through like the stadium and he has trouble walking long distances, and then like he doesn't want to be a burden to people, like
Yeah,
getting like going to the hotel and getting back and forth, and in case there's like a, like a real like mad rush
yeah,
for
yeah,
some
fair enough.
like something that could be a real problem, like I don't know, like a fire or, like something where a dangerous event. He doesn't want to
Yeah,
be a liability.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's totally fair. Yeah, he's
But go back and read some of the stories he wrote last week about the Super Bowl. They're still excellent.
still writing. Okay,
He
I'm going to check it out. No problem. I will do. Yeah, the Super Bowl, of
Yeah.
course, was thrilling. It was a amazing finish with Patrick Mahomes capturing his third chip. So yeah, it was a really really lovely thing. So yeah, I didn't realize he was still writing. So I will
He is.
definitely check it out.
And his next book is coming out this spring about the first African American baseball player in the American League,
Right.
Larry Doby.
Okay. Okay. Right.
Jackie Robinson was the first in the National League with the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yes.
Couple months later, Larry Doby was the first in the American League.
American League. Okay. Right. Okay. Well,
And
I don't really
and
follow
and
baseball as much, but it's good to know that little tidbit. Yeah.
okay. Now Jerry, one of his cornerstones of his career is forming lifelong friendships with people that he writes about, which is
Right.
hard to do because you're sort of adversarial in a way in some
Right.
cases.
Right. Yeah.
The media and the sports industry, have
Mhm.
different sort of agendas.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but Jerry, formed a great relationship with Muhammad Ali and also with George Foreman,
Hmm.
um, with Larry Doby, for example, the man I just mentioned. He
Hmm.
gave he gave the eulogy at his funeral
Oh,
several
wow.
years ago.
Right. Hmm.
Um, the all-time winningest African American football coach, Eddie Robinson.
Hmm. Hmm.
They were excellent friends.
Right. Right.
So I think there's a way of understanding that relationships are important to get
Very
not only quality interviews, but to be connected to people that they're connected to.
very much so. I believe that as well. Yeah.
And I think I think you see that with Peter Vessi's career as well. There are some definite parallels.
Definitely. I was just about to say that as well with him. And even for me, like when I've kind of written pieces on people, it's always good to just kind of just get to understand and kind of just kind of build some warmth with them and rapport to be able to get the
Yeah.
best out of them. So totally fair. And that's definitely something for any young journalist who's coming up, who's probably wanting to go into this profession that you probably need to consider when you're starting to write, do some sports writing. So like I said, we're going to pivot really quickly. We're going to come back to the book.
Okay, please.
One of the reasons why I contacted you, of course, was on your Twitter timeline. I'd seen you do a little bit of a book review called "We Changed the Game," and I was a little interesting what it was about. And of course, I noticed the red, white, and blue colors. I realized it was about the ABA, and I clicked into the article and I realized what it was. It's basically a chronicling of the history of the Indiana Pacers and some of the struggles that they faced. In the ABA, just trying to stay afloat, trying to have the finances to keep the lights on, basically. There's even a phrase I think I saw in the review where it says is win or turn off the lights. If you're not winning, we're going to pull this club. And it was just really interesting to kind of see what the challenges were. I think I think I noticed as well. It said something about like a team was purchased. Was it the ABA? I think the ABA, the teams were like being purchased for like $6,000 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where it started and what it is now, we see teams going for $2, $3, $4 billion now in the US, and it's something else. But of course, you start to chronicle and mention some of the key players in there. Bob Nito Licky, who was a former player, Richard Tinkham, who was a former team executive, and Robin Miller, who was a former newspaper reporter. And they were starting to discuss what they were experiencing at that time. A young David Stern, who was the league's counsel, trying to formalize the merger and all of the conversations that they had. I thought that was really interesting, just juxtaposed to what the leagues are now, thinking about what the Indiana Pacers are right now. Tyrese Halliburton, coming out just recently and talking about 65 games. This is all ridiculous. Where these guys, that's what they did, and they didn't have all of the medical and everything that these guys had back in the day. I even noticed a quote. I cracked up at that. At halftime, Slick Leonard, the coach of the Indiana Pacers at that time, and the players go have cigarettes, and they'll have quick draw contests with their guns in the locker room.
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa, this is a totally different time. So I just thought that really interesting, and I just kind of wanted to get a little bit from you on that and what you think the connections that it has from then to what the league is now. Hard question.
You could hard question because the ABA was the ABA was competing against the NBA. Yeah. So the NBA was very conservative and old school, and they sort of hated the 3-point shot and hated the kind of the renegade style of some of the teams, some of the players. Red Auerbach, the Celtics legendary coach, and then became the front office executive. He was totally against the 3-point shot, and so you had this kind of disrespect for the league, but also you had the draft. You had both leagues drafting and competing for the same players.
Right.
So it was really wild with agents, like backdoor, backroom hotel meetings to to try to sign somebody or get a leg up, so to speak, on a coach or a player. And even like you talked about like the trainer, like maybe like someone getting injured or whatnot. Like these teams, like the support staffs were like so bare boned. It's like it was like one head coach and maybe one assistant coach.
Right.
You look at like an NBA coaching staff now. There's like 9 coaches. They have to sit behind the bench now.
Yes, that's true. That's true. There's a quote talking about the 3-point line and Red Auerbach not liking it. Again, it just shows what the time was. There's a quote in the book where Mel Daniels, who had just come from the Minnesota team in the ABA, he said he had carte blanche when he was in Minnesota, But when he attended his first practice, he took an 18-footer and Slick Leonard stopped him and screamed. He stopped the practice and screamed and said, "If you take another shot beyond 15 feet, I'll break those." That was the mentality back then. And, we see it now where that's totally abandoned. We have Victor Wembanyama, we have Kevin Durant, we have Dirk Nowitzki, who kind of really started that modern day evolution of 7-footers and big guys shooting from the outside. But this is what old basketball was. You use your size and you use your advantages to get high percentage shots.
Yeah, the modern NBA really is really a direct through line to what the ABA was.
Yeah,
a lot of high up tempo basketball, a lot of 3-point shooting, or even more fast breaks than you had it back in the NBA back in the late 60s or early 70s. But there was great talent in both leagues. I mean, look at the Hall of Famers and All-Stars that played in the NBA when it just started out.
That's it. Yep.
Guys like Julius Erving, George McGinnis, et cetera, et cetera. Mel Daniels was a great player. The Pacers were just an absolutely incredible team of talent.
Yeah, and that carried through. Of course, they were probably the franchise was most successful in their ABA days during that 9-year stretch when the ABA was operational, winning 3 championships during that time. Having a better record. I can't remember what the records are. I should have written it down, but they had just a better winning percentage as a team back then to what it is now. Of course, competition has gotten better, players have gotten better. We've seen, the team move from what it was then to having Reggie Miller, Rick Smits, Mark Jackson, to the second iteration of a tough team being Danny Granger, Roy Hibbert, Paul George, and those guys, Travis Best, all these guys Travis Best was before. But and now, of course, this iteration, which is really coming up. And I think it was really cool to try to do this interview this week with the All-Star break being in Indiana as well. I really wanted to kind of make that connection with that. So yeah, I thought it was a really, really cool read. I haven't read the full book. I read your review, and I thought I got quite a lot of the flavor of what it was back in the 60s and 70s. And I think most people probably don't really want to pay attention to the olden days now, and you find a lot of the current players doing that. They do respect the elder guys who paved the way, but we speak about maybe some of their actions off court and how they treat contract negotiations, load management, and all that sort of stuff. Players probably just veering away from some of that. That fervor for playing the game and wanting to be there every night sort of thing. But I thought it was just a really good review. Some of the quotes I've seen inside of here on this book was amazing to read. I got to learn quite a lot from that just reading that. So that was really good.
I really liked how they collaborated, the 3 authors. It was a different kind of project where there were certain sections you could sort of feel an imprint from one of the writers focusing on one aspect, and then another part of the book you could see like it was more business background or more journalism background or Neto Licky, like more the player's background. So it kind of gave it like it was almost like a 3-act play, but it was sort of like it wasn't like straightforward. It went back and forth.
Yes.
And what also is cool about the book is some of the artifacts that they included in the book. Like there are like sample letters from the NBA dealing with like the ABA, like David Stern. There are ticket stubs. There are posters from championships. A lot of cool things.
Right. It's a historical artifact in itself. Well, of course, for the Indiana Pacers, but of that time, it's a snapshot of that time. And there's even one episode where I can't remember what year it was, but of course, early on in their existence, where we speak about the struggles, financial struggles to just kind of keep the team afloat. There was one time that Slick Leonard's wife hosted a telethon to try to get money in, to try to
Oh
just
yeah.
raise the funds to get, you know, enough season ticket holders so the team could continue to play.
The ownership group realized they needed to sell about 2,200 season tickets to bring the total to 8,000, giving the team enough money to keep going. Facing a tough deadline, Nancy Leonard, assistant GM and wife of coach and GM Slick Leonard, had an idea to put together a telethon. She got it done in just 10 days. From 10 p.m. on July 3rd to 2:30 p.m. on July 4th, the telethon took place in the 500 ballroom of the Indy Convention Center.
And, you know, there's this backdrop kind of similar to The Last Dance, where you kind of knew the season was going to end from Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, and that 98 team, where they knew this is it. This is the last dance. That was actually going on with the Pacers at that time too, where the team was going to be folded, but because they won, I think it was a first round, a Game 7 game, and they progressed on to the next round, you know, it brought enough excitement that the ownership decided, no, okay, we'll keep the lights on and let the team continue, which is really, really remarkable to think how they struggled back then compared to now.
I think there's probably some parallels to the foundational era of British soccer, where there were so many club teams that back maybe 100 years ago, or, you know, like every county team or like just a local village team, where I guess the real question is, where is the revenue going to come from? Unless the whole community is like paying into the, like, you don't have the TV contracts or the radio contracts back then to really, you know, just give you enough money to spend. So you have to make sure you have the big crowds.
It's true. Yeah, it's really, really amazing. So that was that book, and I just kind of wanted to kind of get your thoughts on you kind of writing that review and everything. What I'll do now is transition into the next set of questions I wanted to ask you. How long have you been in Japan? You said you were born in New York. Since when did you move over to Japan?
Okay. I moved from Arizona in 2006, the summer of 2006.
Right.
And I lived in Tokyo since then.
Okay, all right, cool. And of course, during that time, you've become, like I said, the editor of the Japan Forward and Sports Look JP. Of course, and you have your own little column, which of course is a clever play on names, odds, and evens, which of course you have
thank you.
Have to use your name in that, and yeah, you have some really great articles on there. And I suppose what I wanted to ask, and I suppose for the viewing audience who might be interested in just like Japan and sports culture, who would you say is the biggest athlete right now from Japan, who's a sporting export, I suppose, to the world, basically?
Okay, number one right now is a baseball player, Shohei Ohtani.
That's it. Yeah.
Who signed a 10-year, $700 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers.
That's it. Yeah, crazy.
So we're talking like Messi level of fame.
Right. Okay. All right.
But as far as, you know, he's been an established star with the Los Angeles Angels, a different team in Major League Baseball, for the past 6, 7
years, I think. Yeah.
18, 19, 20. 6 years.
6 years. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's unique about Ohtani is you have usually a pitcher is not a great hitter, or they're not playing both positions, where he has the skill level and the greatness to do both and dominate and be among the best of the best at both.
That's it. Yeah.
He's injured his elbow, his pitching elbow again, so he's going to be out for the year for pitching. But I can send you a photo later. I shot the front page of the. I took a photograph of one of the sports newspapers' front pages today.
Okay.
And training camp really officially starts, spring training, roughly around February 20th for all the players.
Right.
In Arizona. Now, Ohtani is out there getting early batting practice, you know, ahead of the game, and just cracking home runs, and, you know, and really looking good so far in the spring.
So is he going to continue to play, but just not be pitching, you're saying?
Correct.
Okay. All right. That's so that makes sense.
But he's a lot bigger than most Japanese people. He's roughly about 6'3", 6'4". I think that's 190. What's that? 190 centimeters about?
Not too sure. Yeah, thereabout. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
But
thereabout.
you know, he's real big, powerful, and very just like a wholesome guy, very polite, very friendly, always smiling.
Mhm. Very private as well. I think there was a story
Mhm.
that came out when he was trying to deliberate whether or not he was going to the Yankees or would it be the Dodgers. Where was he going to go during
Mhm.
this contract signing situation? There was a story I heard. You could tell me if that's true or not. I think he did an interview, and I think his dog appeared in the in the interview or something.
Right,
And
right, right.
the interviewer asked him, "Oh, what's your name of your dog? You know, just trying to be friendly. What's the name of your dog?" And he refused to say what the dog's name was because apparently, you could tell me if this is wrong. Apparently, the dog's name is Dodger, and he didn't want to give out the team that he would probably sign with coming up in the new contract. And he was trying to keep that name secret because he would have given too much of a clue as to where he was going to sign. I thought that was really interesting. And in terms of how much he was actually going to keep, you know, certain information really quiet. And we see that a lot from the Asian players. Ichiro Suzuki was notoriously really quiet. And these guys, you know, from the Asian territories, you know, really quiet and to themselves. So yeah, it was really interesting. $700 million. I think I saw on your article it said something like it's 100 billion Japanese dollars or something like that. It's crazy.
Yeah, yen.
Yen.
Yeah,
Oh. My business degree teacher would be so disappointed. I said Japanese dollars rather than yen.
that's
Anyway,
okay. That's okay.
yeah, so that's really cool. And of course, because this is a basketball podcast show, Rui Hachimura and Yuta Watanabe, you know, are the current Japanese players in the league. You know, what's the vibe with them in their home country? Are people following the league as much because they're in it? Was the NBA always very popular? What's the tenor of them, you know, representing their country?
Well, the impact of them being in the league at the same time and being, you know, playing well, pretty actively. Watanabe has sort of sometimes he's been he's been inactive, you know,
Yeah,
occasionally,
yeah.
but there's been a skyrocketing in media coverage,
Mm-hmm.
both in terms of video highlights and rebroadcasting games, or even, you know, Japanese pregame shows, and the NBA contract with Rakuten.
Yes,
Rakuten is the sponsor of the Golden State Warriors.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Rakuten's website is where people go to get an NBA pass
Updates.
for streaming services.
Right,
You know, single game pass, monthly pass, season pass.
right,
It's all done through Rakuten, which is in partnership with the NBA.
right.
And before Watanabe was made the league, you know, a year before Hachimura.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 2018 for Watanabe.
Mm-hmm.
There was a big period there where the NBA was losing some of its interest because Yuta Tabuse only played 4 games for the Phoenix Suns back in
Yeah, saw that.
2004.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
He was the cut, and the national team had really been struggling on the international stage.
Mm-hmm.
So when Michael Jordan was playing, this was before I was in Japan, but there was a bigger demand for coverage, and like NHK, a national broadcaster,
Mm-hmm.
had more games of the week, and it sort of got phased out for a while,
Mm.
where it was like on satellite TV or like really ultra premium cable.
Right, right.
But with the improvement of the national team, and there's been a merger of two of the corporate league and the upstart league
Mm-hmm.
back in 2016. FIBA forced the merger of these two rival leagues
Mm-hmm. Okay.
after suspending the National Basketball Federation.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of Patrick Baumann's legacies in Japan before he passed away, the
Okay.
former FIBA Secretary General. He
Okay.
forced them to get their act together to follow the FIBA bylaws. You
Mm.
can only have one top league in each country if you're a member of FIBA.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
So like the NBA cannot have a top rival if USA Basketball wants to be part of FIBA under current rules,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have one designated top league
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that is FIBA recognized.
Okay. Okay.
Now, back in 2005, an upstart league began in Japan with only 6 teams.
Mm.
A decade later, when the merger was forced, there were 24 teams in the BJ League.
Wow. Okay.
Basketball Japan League. The new league is called the B League.
Right. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But there's been sort of like a multifaceted uptick in basketball. With the women's team was the silver medalist in the Tokyo 2020.
Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm.
And the men's team qualified for Paris through FIBA last summer at the World Championship down in Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
I spent 10 days down there. It was great.
Awesome.
Really enjoyable watching a bunch of games and a lot of teams.
Mm-hmm.
Luka Doncic was there, for example. Patty Mills. Patty Mills is still kicking it really strong.
I saw him in the Atlanta Hawks uniform a couple of days ago. I'm like, oh wow, he's still out there.
He was impressive. Germany.
Yes.
Schrader was really good for Germany.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
but yeah.
The social media impact of having Hachimura and Watanabe together in the league is huge.
It's huge
because you think of Japan as a really homogenous country, and even people that don't love basketball, but they're proud of the fact that there's Japanese in the NBA.
Right.
They're also liking and retweeting, and sharing, and it's massive.
That's awesome. And it's great to see, because one of the greatest commercial moves I saw was when Rui Hachimura was getting drafted to the NBA and he signed a shoe deal with Jordan Brand. I was like, oh, that's really smart. Really, really smart. Get their shoes out to a new market, and him getting that national following would have been huge for a company like that who doesn't need any help by itself. But being able to extend their tentacles to new corners of different countries was definitely a great move. What I'm gonna do here, Ed, I'm gonna stop for a second. And we're going to come back and just ask 1 or 2 more questions, and then that's it. I think we really complete. I think we covered quite a lot in the short space of time, and we're going to do this, and we're going to be right back in a second. We're back here again with Ed Odeven, who is, like we said at the start of the show, sports editor at the Japan Forward, and Sports Look JP, and also author of Going 15 Rounds with Jerry Izenberg. And just before we dropped off on the last section of the segment in this call, you were just you wanted to say that you wanted to share a little Rui Hachimura story. What is it? I'm really dying to hear what this is.
Okay, so there was plenty of speculation that he was definitely going to be drafted back in 2019. He had good workouts. He had a really good junior year. Won the Julius Erving Award as the top small forward, and just really showed his ability as an all-around athlete and as a explosive player inside, decent outside player. Just his development curve was pretty strong throughout his career at Gonzaga, and so you might know, being not from Japan, that the Japanese noodles are pretty famous around the world, right?
Right.
Or it's sort of, people expect the Japanese people to eat a lot of noodles, or it's part of the cuisine that is pretty common. And of course, instant noodles are quite common in a lot of supermarkets or convenience stores. Okay, so the night before the draft, might have even been closer to 36 hours before the draft, one of the bigger instant noodle companies, Nissin, Nissin, announced that Hachimura would be one of their new endorsees for the product.
Fair enough.
So the photos of him next to these giant cardboard bowls of noodles, cut out posters, pretty cool visually.
Right. If you have any pictures of that, it'll be good to see. Put it up on screen if anything. That's really cool, and it's one of those advantages of course, being one of the best in the world, being drafted to the NBA, and being from a country which probably doesn't have as many NBA players in it. You kind of get a lot of commercial interest and people wanting you to endorse their products to kind of get their word out there about their products overseas. So yeah, it makes total sense why they would do something like that. And is I'm guessing instant noodles is a favorite of yours as well, as part of the cuisine.
It's pretty good. Yeah, yeah. Add water, add some soy sauce maybe, and
That's
there
it.
you go.
It's probably the best kind of real quick meal to have when you're on a deadline for a sports article, I'm sure. Right. Okay, so what we want to close up here really quickly is, well, like you mentioned, we spoke about the Tokyo Olympics, and I know we had a little chat, of course, before we arranged this interview, and you told me, well, of course, because of what the world was enduring at that time with the pandemic, everything was locked down. People were not able to, attend sports stadiums, see things happening. It had to be only a few people COVID tested, vaccinated, and everything to be part of play for quite a lot of these sporting things. We saw this, of course, with the bubble in the NBA in Orlando. And I just kind of, even though you were not able to attend, like you said, I thought it would just be really cool to kind of just hear what that time was for you as someone who's a sports writer who probably who would have been there, who would have had a press pass to cover the games. What was that time like? And it's amazing that we're so far away from it now. It feels like a long time ago. But let's just relive. What was that time like as a sports writer in Japan?
Well, the days were very compact, just a lot going on, within a like 18-hour period from when the moment you wake up to the moment you're asleep.
Right.
So Japan Forward is only in its 7th year now.
Okay.
And I joined in 2020 after leaving the Japan Times, after being there for almost 14 years.
Okay.
And the operation did not have a sports section. So I became the first employee who was actually like full-time in sports.
Okay.
And we've gradually built up we've built up a bit more frequent coverage. I've got a couple part-timer correspondents, and we've gradually been increasing our workload and just our volume of stories. But back in July 2021, we actually launched a Sports Look like 2 weeks before the Olympics.
Right.
So there was the challenge of the interface of publishing often the same story twice and getting it from one and migrating it to the other.
Yeah.
So there were some technical challenges of just getting everything done. And but as far as like watching the events, sort of what I would sometimes be doing was I'd have my computer with like a split screen watching like two different browsers of two different sports at the same time.
Yep.
And I'd also have my smartphone like, a foot away. And I'd have the TV on. So I might be following 3 or 4 events simultaneously.
4 events, yeah, it's true, yeah.
Let's say there's a track and field event and a swimming race,
yeah,
and a volleyball match, and baseball, and I was selecting about 80% of the photos we use too.
Right.
It's exhilarating, but it's exhausting with a very tiny staff.
Yeah.
It's really fun and memorable, and there were some great athletes to watch with so many sports.
Yeah, for sure. The Olympics is always a great time. Many people who are casual fans and who don't necessarily follow sports, at all kind of come in at that time during the Olympics to kind of follow their national teams and kind of just take in some sort of sporting excellence as you see in the Olympics. So yeah, it makes quite a lot of sense. So, but it all went off. It was done. It was complete. Everything went off without a glitch. Of course, minus the fanfare of fans being there physically. Of course, USA. Won in the final against France. Japan, had a little bit of a disappointing outing. I think they were 0-3 in the qualifying rounds and stuff. But it was a good time, I'm sure, because hosting it regardless probably would have been a prideful moment for Japanese over there. One thing I want to mention, actually, whilst I was doing some little research for this, I didn't actually realize Brooklyn Nets guard Cam Thomas was actually born in Japan. I only found that out this morning. Although on Wikipedia it says he's American, I suppose he has dual nationality, but his mom lived in Japan and he was born there. I wasn't aware of that.
I believe he was born on I believe he was born on a military base, correct?
Probably so. Yeah, yeah, I think so. That's yeah.
You know, we're talking about Ohtani a little while ago, and Dave Roberts, the manager of the LA Dodgers, his mother's side of the family is Japanese, and his father is African American.
Right.
And you know, his family has a long history in Okinawa.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Whilst I was just trying to think of or kind of research who are, what's the lineage of Japanese players in the NBA, and of course you have Rui. You have Yuta Watanabe, we have Yuta Chabuse, like you mentioned, Cam, which I didn't know. And then
do you remember Rex Walters back in the day?
Not really, not as much.
former Kansas guard. He's also half Japanese American.
Okay, that name didn't come up on the search I did, because the other two I got were naturalized Japanese. J.R. Henderson, who became J.R. Sakuragi, changed his name when he moved there in 2001, and then Nick Facekas was born in Colorado and moved there in 2012. So that's the very short list of Japanese connected players in the league. So I just thought that was really interesting, and I just wanted to bring that up as well.
You know, JR, he was drafted in 1998.
Yes.
In the second round, Vancouver Grizzlies.
Yes.
And he retired for the first time in 2020. He played for two full decades, and you know his team was really successful. Emperor's Cup tournament winners many times, and the national title with the old JBL.
Right.
He made a brief comeback last season at age 46.
Wow.
As a playing coach. He was coaching, but he came back as a backup post player, but only played a handful of games. But he kept himself in really great shape and flexibility and just knowing how to take care of himself. He really ate well and exercised well, and was a good role model.
Awesome. That's great. Well, you know what, Ed, I'm gonna try to wrap this up now. I think you've given me such an amazing interview. I'd like to really thank you for all of the information and the knowledge that you shared with me today on Baseline to Baseline with Alister Albert. I thought this was really good to try to get some of that little history of the Pacers, like I said, from your book review. Of course, going 15 rounds with Jerry Izenberg, your book. You definitely want to shout that out again. So if anyone is interested watching this in a journalism career and probably wants to see how an all-time great did it and kind of rose to the level of notoriety, respect, and everything, read this book. I think it kind of shows you what you need to kind of go through. Of course, there's different day and age now. We have technology. You probably don't have to be at players all the time as much anymore, but being able to build that rapport and having that human touch to it is really important in being able to write great articles. And this is all covered in his book, like we said, published in 2020. Where can they get the book right now? Is it on Amazon? Where could people find it if they want to?
Yeah, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other online booksellers.
Awesome.
There's various ones that people search the title, they'll find it.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, so yeah, if you're interested in that, we'll definitely have a look at that. That's our little promo for today for sure. And Ed, I'll let you get some sleep. It's minutes to 1 after 1 minutes, 2 minutes to 1 on your side. I just want to say thank you very much. This has been a long time coming, but thank you. As soon as this gets published, you will know.
Okay. Let me back you up for a second, please.
Yes.
Okay, we were talking about Ohtani's dog a little while ago. Okay, the name is Decopine.
Decopine. Okay, what is that Japanese?
Which is in English? It's decoy.
Okay, decoy.
So, yeah, it's kind of like a very mysterious name. Like
right.
The dog's name isn't Dodger, but.
Right. Okay. So the speculation and the rumors that were going around at that time was false. I'm quoting false. I quoted something false here, but that's what actually was going on in the media at the time.
Okay.
That's how the media could kind of as well pick up stories and just run with it. And I thought that really interesting at that time. But now we know it was decoy, and in a way, it probably was a bit of a smokescreen for what was going to happen in his free agency.
The dog might have been a decoy in and of itself, right?
In and of itself. That's it. That's it. Well, and thank you very much. We shall talk again really soon. And, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being on here with me today.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me, Alister.
All right. No problem. Thank you. All right, everyone. Now, of course, welcome back. That was a really great interview with Ed. You got to learn so much there. Get to know a bit more about his book. With speaking about Jerry Izenberg, a famed sports writer of decades, covering so many different sports, and getting to hear a little bit of his thoughts and what he's done. But also the book review, changing the game, or we changed the game, that kind of highlighted and chronicled the history of the Indiana Pacers and some of the challenges that they did and everything. So if you love historical basketball and you want to know a little bit more about the ABA and stuff that's happened leading up to this day, go rewind, go check out that interview. It was really, really cool. So I'd like to thank Ed again for jumping in. But of course, we like to come here and do right now our Bétiz of the week. Bétiz of the week. Of course, this is where I call out what I think is ridiculous, or what has been ridiculous, or what has been nonsense, what has been ridiculous in the NBA so far for this week. So definitely want to call out one or two things. So number one, Bétiz number one. Have a look here at Mr. Victor Wembanyama. Dude went all Kanye on us with his mask on his tunnel walk for the last game. You already can't miss him. He's 7'5". And he's here walking in full ski mask, goggles, all black Air Force Ones. He was coming to do some serious damage that game. But yeah, that's a bit too much for me, bro. You could be seen already. You're 7'5". We need to walk in like that. That's a bit too much. That's nonsense for me. I'm sorry, Victor. I know you're very fashion forward. You from France, of course. I have connections to the French fashion scene, yes. But this is a little bit too out there for me. But kudos to you. You could pull it off. You're probably gonna be the rookie of the year, and everyone's gonna watch what you do. You had that amazing Louis Vuitton suit that green Louis Vuitton suit. I believe it was at draft day. People were kind of trying to figure out, what was that, and it could have been a little more hyped or whatever. But that one is a bit too much for me. See that black outfit? You could do all black. You see the mask and everything. That was a bit too much for me. So Bétiz number one, Victor Wembanyama and his tunnel walk recently. Bétiz number two, I like to call this one out specifically because this is something that I've noticed over the past few seasons and years. Of course, with the evolution of the game, we're now moving towards guys who are more perimeter focused, centers included, and you have guys who are, of course, 3-point shooters, and you're now looking for Victor Wembanyama's guys who could handle the rock at the top of the court, behind the perimeter, who could shoot frees, shoot step back frees, could handle the ball and everything. But those guys are few and far between. I don't think there's so many of these guys in the world being manufactured in the world at the moment. But of course, we're trending towards that. So the evolution of the game, and I suppose physicality will probably trend towards that as we move on. But Andre Drummond on the Chicago Bulls. A couple of days ago, I wrote a tweet in response to an interview, a post-game press conference that Billy Donovan had, of coach of the Chicago Bulls, where he was talking about, the efficiency and the impact of Andre Drummond playing against the Minnesota Timberwolves, where he had a 16-16 night in 35 minutes. Andre Drummond, get this, trivia point for you. He is the highest, he has the highest rebound percentage in NBA history. I think there's probably a caveat there because Wilt Chamberlain averaged ridiculous numbers of rebounds, but I have a feeling that maybe because the stats weren't all recorded back in the day, and there's a lot of missing stats. He's probably been excluded from that list because we just have missing stats. But I think if we have to go by what we know of the game historically, Wilt Chamberlain will probably be that. But in the modern era, post-merger, modern day history, Andre Drummond has the highest rebound percentage of any player ever, right? So he is over 25%, of rebounds corralled by this guy. He is an offensive threat. He can post up, he can play, he can use some physicality. He's had a few moments where he probably hasn't been as dominant as he could be in his career. But most notably when he was in Detroit, he was a two-time All-Star, four-time rebounding champ. And he had a really remarkable career. And every time since moving on from Cleveland, he's been a creditable, serviceable big man who could play a lot more minutes than 16 and a half for the Chicago Bulls right now. And he could have probably been on any other team that probably would have used him better. But, okay, granted, we are in the evolution of a game where, we're not playing centers, lumbering centers in this way anymore. So I suppose in terms of matchups, that limits Billy Donovan's potential to want to use Andre Drummond just because of matchups. But going against the Minnesota Timberwolves, he was the X factor of that game, going up against Karl Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert, who also is on that highest rebound percentage ever list, right? So Rudy Gobert is actually 6 on this list of highest ever, averaging about 21.6% of rebounds corralled once he's on the court. So it's really interesting to see that a guy who has the proficiency and the skill to do what he can on a basketball court based on his rebounding ability and being able to get your team more possessions, he's not used a lot more. This is a struggling Chicago Bulls team. Yes, Nikola Vucevic is the center or the starting center. He probably should be starting at 4 alongside Andre Drummond if they want to use the size advantages that they have. Now, of course, we're in the NBA that is a copycat league. Everyone wants to shoot 3-pointers now, and a lot of the times they don't have the personnel to do it. We have a team here who has a size advantage, not using it, and of course, they're faltering or not doing too great. Although recently, Kobe White, DeMar DeRozan, and the guys have been winning some games. But for the time Billy Donovan has been there with Andre Drummond, he hasn't been used as much, 16.5 minutes per game, like I said, and the losses have been piling up. Hopefully, as the season progresses and he's seen, Drummond's capabilities to rebound as much as he does. Of course, he knows that, but maybe he could put him in more games and give the Bulls a lot more of a fighting chance. So I think that's Bétiz number 2 for me. Billy Donovan and his rotations, and ignoring the fact that he has a gem on his bench who probably should be a starter, getting somewhere between 20 to 25 minutes to give your guys more possessions, right? So I think Billy Donovan and his coaching and with the choices that he's making in his rotations lack a little bit of, common sense, let's say, right? So Billy Donovan is probably one that has been known as being a bit predictable in his lineups, but this is a predictable lineup that should be used, right? We're not talking X's and O's, we're talking about someone who should be in the lineup. So Billy Donovan, you occupy my space of Bétiz number 2. Sort yourself out, bro. Your rotations are ridiculous. Right. Bétiz number 3, the Orlando Magic. Orlando Magic. I like to call out the Orlando Magic franchise. Last night, of course, we saw the Oklahoma City Thunder visiting the Orlando Magic, where they had the jersey retirement ceremony for Shaquille O'Neal, right? Number 32 going up into the rafters, and it's, of course, well-deserved. Only spent a short time there from 92 to 96 before being traded, most infamously to the Los Angeles Lakers. But he had a dominant stretch there. Of course, we know what he was like. His career was set from LSU, basically, when he was in college. But his time in Orlando really pushed the needle for his dominance and what we were expecting to see throughout his career. His number was retired, right? I actually need to see who else is retired, because I think they said this is the 3rd number that was retired into the rafters. I'll put those up at the bottom of the screen. Who else is retired? Why isn't Penny Hardaway retired, number 1? Why does Jonathan Isaac have the number 1 jersey in Orlando? It doesn't make sense to me. And of course, Shaq was dominant as he was, but he played alongside a super talented Penny Hardaway, who during his time with the Orlando Magic was a 4-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA player, was third in MVP voting behind MJ, David Robinson, and well, third place. He was, he's had a really good career, averaging 19 points, 4.7 rebounds, 6.3 assists on 47 and 31 shooting splits. Penny Hardaway was just as important to the Orlando Magic team as Shaq and Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott and Darrell Armstrong and all the other guys who were on that team, right? Penny Hardaway should be going up in the rafters with Shaq, right? I think the Orlando Magic, to me, it shows a level of disrespect to their history, given no disrespect to Jonathan Isaac. He was a highly touted player coming into the league. His defensive prowess, but he's been injured, hadn't played 2 seasons the last few years. Of course, they're trying to ease him back into minutes and everything. And when he's on the court, he is impactful. I think he's averaging 8 and 5 for his career since being there. And is a really good defensive guy, blocks, rebounds, etc. But Jonathan Isaac is not someone I believe that the Orlando Magic should have even considered allowing to wear the number 1. Of course, there was another number 1, which again was disrespectful in its own sense to Penny, but Tracy McGrady, of course, who was traded or was acquired by the Orlando Magic from Toronto early in his career. During his time there, he was a 4-time All-Star, 4-time All-NBA, regular in the MVP ballot. This was a guy who was a scoring champ twice in 2003 and 2004. And shooting his stats being 28.1 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists on 45% field goals, 36% 3-point percentage. T-Mac, of course, is in the Hall of Fame. And I think that also deserves most Hall of Fame players who played a certain amount of time with a franchise and kind of accumulated their legacy in a certain team get their jerseys retired, right? So, yes, he spent quite a lot of time in Houston. He had the first few years, of course, from rookie in Toronto. But I think Tracy McGrady came into the fold of superstardom whilst he was with the Orlando Magic, battling with Kobe Bryant for, one of the most prolific scorers in the league at this time. Why aren't Penny Hardaway and Hall of Famer Tracy McGrady, who both wore the number 1, which is a bit of an anomaly in itself, why aren't their jerseys retired in the Amway Center? Is it the Amway Center? I think they changed names. I'm not too sure. Is it, whatever the name of the arena is, those 2 jerseys should be up. Whether it's a shared number 1 banner with McGrady and Penny on it or 2 separate ones, those guys' jerseys should be up in the rafters. And especially, you saw what the reaction of the crowd was when Penny walked out for Shaq's jersey retirement last night. The crowd just was screaming his name, Penny, 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 right? This is a guy who should be respected by the Orlando Magic, and I feel it's really a shame that they haven't given him the respect that he deserves, having his jersey retired up in the rafters. So these are my 3 Bétiz of the week observations. Yeah, Victor Wembanyama's tunnel walk. We saw that, and I think you need to see it again. You need to see it again. This is amazing. We've seen Kyle Kuzma do some stuff. We've seen James Harden do some stuff, but yeah, when a 7'5" guy does it, it's noteworthy. Bétiz number 2, of course, is Billy Donovan and his rotations and choices of rotations with Andre Drummond not playing as much as he should, in my estimation. And Bétiz number 3, of course, the Orlando Magic should retire Tracy McGrady and Penny Hardaway's numbers to the rafters, just like they did for Shaq last night. So that is the roundup of Bétiz of the week. And of course, we would like to quickly go on into the footnote section. And I think this one right here, I think is a really special one. And it's a different vibe that started last year, where you started to see the crossover of male to female in the league, where shoes are concerned. And if you have any idea of what I might be talking about when I say that, you probably would know or realize Sabrina Ionescu has been a game changer in the sense of what her signature shoe has been for the culture for the culture of basketball and what she's done. So this is the Sabrina one, but this is of course Nike by You colorway. This is not one of the standard not one of the standard offerings on Nike.com. She has a lot of Brooklyn colorways and everything. So this is the Sabrina one, and I think the hype has been justified. One of the things that had been said was that it was really reminiscent of Kobe Bryant shoes. Most people had, of course, the low top version from when you see he kind of went from the Kobe 4, going all the way up to, Kobe 9, 10, 11. Low top construction, mesh textile upper, loads of embroidery on there. I'm not sure if you could see. Well, yeah, you could see here. Loads of embroidery on the upper that's, really nice and detailed. You could actually see a review of this shoe on weartesters.com. I'll actually give them a shout out. Anytime I want to find out a little bit about a shoe, I kind of go on there to just see if it's something that, makes sense based on what's being put out on retail. But very light, one of the lightest shoes that I own. And of course, on the Nike by You, what was previously called Nike ID, you could choose, loads of different colors, loads of different patterns. I think you could have mismatched swooshes. So you could have a red swoosh on this side shoe and then a blue one on the other if you wanted. Textile side panels, breathable tongue, traction, which is amazing. I think you could see from the pattern on here, it's a multi-directional traction design, which kind of mimics herringbone in some sort of way. But of course, is a bit of a unique traction pattern with the Sabrina S in the middle. And yeah, it's an awesome shoe, and we've seen loads of NBA players wear this shoe. You have Drew Holiday, former defensive player of the year, Jordan Poole, Mikal Bridges, Cade Cunningham. I think Anthony Simons at one point wore them, or has been wearing them. And NBA guys, of course, they're men, obviously, and they would be very specific about the types of shoes that they want to wear, because it's their job. Their feet is what kind of make them the money. They have to move up and down the court, so they tend to be very particular about their shoes, and usually it helps determine which companies they go with. But the Sabrina has able to transcend male and female gender restrictions in every sort of way. She says, this shoe was made for anyone. There's actually, you probably might not be able to see it. So anyone, anywhere, if you could see, right? And she made a really lovely design shoe. There's of course a lot of comparisons to the Kobe 5. Which I could see, I suppose, the shape of the shoe. And of course, she was a big Kobe Bryant fan. She was just coming into the WNBA. I think at the time Kobe had just passed, played for the Oregon Ducks, and she was a big Kobe fan. And she, I suppose, probably wanted a pair of shoes that mimicked, the performance of a Kobe Bryant shoe. So this is the Sabrina one. Really cool detail here is the swoosh placement. Something she said I thought was really interesting. This, of course, this actually has a function rather than just style reasoning, actually. This is a little harder. It's like a hard plastic, which is like a heel counter that kind of tries to stabilize the heel in the shoe. So its placement here is actually to kind of help stabilize and lock down your foot into the shoe. So the placement of the swoosh is also style and function. But the reasoning she said they wanted to place the swoosh here in this configuration was she said that it was a way to kind of symbolize breaking barriers, reaching the ceiling, breaking the glass ceiling, and wanting to do something that had not been done. Of course, we see guys now wearing shoes from women all over the league. Breanna Stewart, of course, is with the WNBA as well, one of the best players in the league. She's with Puma, and a lot of the Puma athletes, Michael Porter Jr., DeAndre Ayton, have been wearing her shoes in the NBA as well. So a lot of brands are doing that crossover and genderless shoe now. But Sabrina, I think, was the one who really made it cool. And of course, we all know I'm very Nike biased and Nike skewed. So this is where it's at for me. So this is a Nike by You colorway, like I said. And the reason why I chose this shoe today is because we have the All-Star game coming up this weekend, or All-Star weekend coming up this weekend in Indiana. And Sabrina has said, or Steph Curry had intimated that he wanted to face off Sabrina in the three-point contest because she has the most points ever in the three-point contest. You know, she obliterated the field when she played it. She did it at the All-Star WNBA All-Star game. And Steph was like, nah, man, I have to settle the score. I need to shoot against her. And the league initially announced when they were putting out all of the stuff for Indiana this year, saying that she will compete in the competition against Steph. And she will shoot from the WNBA line, which is a little bit closer than the NBA line for men. But she came back very quickly on Twitter or X and said, I want to shoot from the NBA line. Don't give me no WNBA line. I want to show you that I could shoot from the NBA line. So, you know, props to her. I think a lot of guys have come out and said, you know, they're going to be backing her rather than Steph, which is interesting. Even Klay Thompson, I think, had said he's going to be backing Sabrina in this contest, which is really interesting. Teammate of Steph Curry as well. So the Sabrina ones available on Nike.com and other retailers in the, of course, the general release colorways. This, like I said, is a custom version, but you could get them the generally released colorways on Nike.com or wherever else you buy your Nike shoes from retail. So that's the footnote, and this ends the episode today on Baseline to Baseline with Alister Albert. I'd like to thank you, of course, and thank Ed Odeven, like I said, who had an amazing interview with us. I really enjoyed this and appreciate the time he spent with us today. And, you know, like and subscribe. Like I always say, I really love to get the numbers up on the channel, and hopefully you like the different sections. What I try to do is put the sections on YouTube and kind of you could fast forward to the different sections if you want. So if you don't want to watch the whole thing, that's fine. You could kind of fast forward to the sections just by clicking a button, and you could kind of listen to what's going on. So Bétiz of the week is there, footnote is there, and of course the interview with Ed Odeven. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode where, who knows, I might have a guest again or I might not. You got to stay tuned and see what happens. But thanks for watching, and see you soon.